The National Empowerment Fund has launched the Economic Distress Fund for Black-owned businesses to help them recover from the COVID-19 induced financial crunch. Mziwabantu Dayimani, NEF General Counsel, joins us now for more on this. Thank you so much for your time this evening, sir. Perhaps before we can go into the distress fund exactly, paint us a picture about how businesses in South Africa have been affected during this time, specifically around the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Nati, and good evening to the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Businesses have been severely affected by COVID-19. As you know, during the course of last year, we experienced a period of hard lockdowns, which meant that a lot of businesses did not generate any revenues, so they could not pay for their usual expenses. Also, for most employees, it meant that they were not able to earn their salaries. So it was a serious impact for both businesses and households equally.
Now, Mr. Dayimani, the NEF has now launched the Economic Distress Fund. Talk to us about what exactly this fund is and what it is hoping to achieve, with specific reference, obviously, to those Black-owned businesses.
The National Empowerment Fund is an agency of the South African government. We report to the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition under Minister Ibrahim Patel. So this fund recognizes that businesses have suffered severely as a result of COVID-19. There is a need, therefore, for interventions that will ensure that businesses are able to get back on course and are able to survive during this tough time. We are still in a period of lockdown. It's not as severe as it was last year. So businesses are slowly getting back into operation, but they are not where they are supposed to be, which means that some of the businesses, especially Black businesses, are not able to pay for their usual expenses. They're not able to pay for their operating expenses. So the fund is there to support those kinds of businesses. It offers support for businesses from an amount of about 250,000 rand up to 10 million rand for a business, in order for a business to pay for its normal operating expenses.
Now, if social media is anything to go by, I mean, just looking at some of those responses to your announcement and your launch, the fund is being viewed in parts as being very discriminatory, and some dare say that it is racist. Talk to us about your comments around what you think those sentiments mean for you.
Those sentiments are not correct, Onati, because as you know, the National Empowerment Fund has an exclusive mandate of supporting broad-based Black economic empowerment. Now, that does not mean that we are anti-white business, but the government recognizes that there are measures that are required in order to ensure that we have substantive equality in the country. So this is linked to Section 9 of the Constitution. So our mandate is a constitutional mandate. The government needs to put measures in place to ensure that it supports Black business. We need to see more entrepreneurs coming from the Black community that are going to participate in the mainstream of the economy. We are not saying that these businesses are going to be providing substandard services or quality products, but what we are saying is that we need to actually recognize that Black people historically have suffered as a result of apartheid, and the government has taken a deliberate step of setting up the NEF in order to support Black business. There are many other avenues to support all businesses in the country, but we believe that we need to ensure that there is an opportunity for Black business to succeed within the South African economy.
Now, while I'm sure that a lot of Black-owned businesses out there are very relieved with the news of this fund and the launch, we know that some of these funds have very onerous and red tape that are around them, making it very difficult for them to access the funding. Talk to us about how this whole process will be implemented, and when are we likely to see the first recipients receiving money that is desperately needed, as you've said?
You will recall that during the course of last year, the NEF, also working with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, launched a COVID fund, which was supporting businesses that were responding to the government's call for certain products that would support its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. So we proved during that period that the NEF is able to roll out those kinds of products. We are agile, and we were able to roll out those businesses. We supported a lot of businesses, and a lot of them are still in existence today, and they are successful. And the same is going to be happening under this particular fund. We actually have ensured that our structures are agile. We've set up a specific committee that will approve transactions that are falling within this fund. And our teams have actually been prepared to ensure that they respond to this current fund. And we ensure that we look at transactions on a weekly basis. So there will be approvals of transactions on a weekly basis starting from the next week.
Now, you talk about the initial cash injection that was obviously released to a number of businesses that were struggling at the onset of the pandemic. And you're saying that you supported a lot of businesses. Talk to us exactly how you were able to do so. How many businesses are we talking about here?
So we supported in excess of 30 businesses. The allocation to the NEF was for an amount of about 200 million. We were able to approve transaction in excess of 240 million rand. We used the funds that were allocated to us and some of the funds that the NEF had in its own coffers. So we ensured that those businesses, and we supported in excess of about 40 jobs per business that were supported in the last year. And we supported sustainable businesses that were producing PPEs, that were producing the hospital equipment, and all the other initiatives that were supporting the government's fight against the pandemic. And at the same time as we were doing that, we ensured that Black business in particular, was successful in executing their obligations in terms of the various initiatives that they were undertaking.
And of course, that drive probably led you to this kind of distress fund. I would imagine that you saw a number of gaps that are still needed where Black-owned businesses are concerned. Now, when we look at this distress fund, you talk about offering concessionary business loans as equity funding with a maximum interest rate of 2.5%. Unpack how this will work for both the recipients and also for the funders.
So for the recipient, they will be able to apply under this fund, and they will get the funding in a form of a loan or equity into their business, whichever structure that our committee believes is optimal for each business. So each business will be looked at it on its own merits. The qualifying criteria is that the business must be in distress. In other words, it must not be able to meet its financial obligations. That distress must be as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. So the business must demonstrate that, but for COVID, it would have continued to be a sustainable business. So this fund is aimed at supporting businesses that are experiencing misfortune as a result of COVID-19. And as I said, transactions will be considered on a weekly basis. So our teams will be submitting the proposals from the businesses, and each business, we request that they have a turnaround plan in place that shows that they will be able to turn the business around within the next 12 to 24 months period. So the businesses that we support are businesses that where owners believe that their businesses will succeed if they are given an injection of funding to take them through the current slump that they're experiencing as a result of COVID-19. And we ensure that we disperse the funds to the businesses within a week or two after the approval process.
All right, so just a final question from me. I'm looking at some of the conditions that you've set aside for the recipients or potential recipients, and some of them look quite, very unrealistic. Just talk to us about some of the decision behind these restrictions. I mean, one of the restrictions is that you have to commit to local procurement, as an example. We're speaking of 10 conditions that you've put aside here. What are some of the things that have led you to put these conditions as a process for applying for the funding?
So what we are saying is that there should be gatekeepers to the fund. In other words, we expect that the businesses that are supported, they need to commit to the South African economy. Now, each business, as I said, will be looked at on its own merits. We will look at where a business owner believes that they are not able to meet a specific condition. They are more than welcome to come and speak to us, and we will look at that particular business on its own merits. But things like a business being in on good terms, in terms of their tax obligations, is a moral obligation for any good corporate citizen in South Africa. And we will also look at those situations where businesses have to do local procurement, because there are many opportunities for local procurement. There might be exceptions. Those will be treated as such, as exceptions. But we are saying that the South African economy should have first preference in terms of the funding that comes from the South African government.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. That's where we have to leave it for this time tonight. Mziwabantu Dayimani from the NEF, while the NEF